Hi everyone. So today we're looking at the retention of nutrients when we look at how we prepare and cook our food. So food, optimum nutritional value is actually when it's fresh and it's picked off the plant when it has its full nutritional value. So as soon as that food then starts to sit out in the elements, once it's been picked, it starts to lose some of its nutrients, either through enzyme reactions or contact with heat, light, oxygen, or even changes in the pH of the environment in which it's sitting. So food's nutritional value is also changed in its manufacture and cooking. So often, for example, if we're going to cook food, lasagna in a tray, for example, has already been cooked compared to its raw ingredients, but before you go to purchase it in the supermarket. And the end product is often combined with another product, and that either increases or decreases the macro and micronutrients compared to the original food. So if we have a look, for example, at apples compared to pie per 100 grams, so the nutritional content of those two are completely different. So for example, apples, if we have a look here, got a bit of energy, a little bit of protein, not much fat, no saturated fat, a little bit of fiber, a bit of natural sugar, some vitamin C, calcium, and iron. Now, if we look at apple pie, for example, first thing we can tell is the energy is increased by about fourfold. We've got an increase in protein, which is actually all right, but we've got a massive increase in fat, and half of that increase in fat is actually saturated. The carbohydrate intake has actually increased a lot. We've actually seen a removal of a dietary fiber and a huge increase in sugar. And the vitamin C in content has actually decreased. And the calcium's increased because there might be a bit of butter in there, and then the iron stayed the same. So the retention of nutrients when you cook food um, will change. So we tend to cook food to change its taste or its texture or to preserve it, and it's often a lot more palatable if we do cook it. However, if we have an increase in water that's used to cook, we'll have an increase in vitamin loss. And so dietary fiber and protein are usually not affected in the cooking process. They are, however, affected in the food preparation. So for example, if you peel your fruit and vegetable, you're actually losing fruit fiber in the skin as well as micronutrients. And say protein as well, depending on how you prepare your meats. For example, you might lose a little bit of protein if you're pretty heavy-handed with how you chop up and you cut out pieces of meat that are perfectly good but may not look pretty. So minerals can also be destroyed by direct heating methods like frying. So there are a whole bunch of different cooking methods. So we're going to look, so for boiling, simmering and poaching, that's where you have methods that are water-based cooking. What happens is we have leaching of water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C, thiamine or niacin, and they are either lost due to heat sensitivity or water solubility. So all of our water-soluble vitamins potentially will be leached out into the water. So vitamins that aren't or nutrients that aren't affected do include omega-3. So poaching fish, for example, is a good option. But what you'll notice is that if you lose, you can lose up to 50% of vitamin C when you boil it because it leaches out into the water. So if your water, when you finish cooking your broccoli, is a color, that means that the nutrients have moved from the broccoli into the water. So unless you actually consume that water, you won't actually be consuming the nutrients that are in that water. However, if you do put it back in, you can actually consume about 80 to 100% of nutrients. So grilling and broiling include a heat source that either comes from below, which is grilling, or broiling, where it comes from above. And you can get a loss of 40% of B vitamins and as well as minerals due to nutrients dripping from the meat or the vegetables. So anything that drips down into the barbecue is lost, and the same can be said for anything on a grill. So uh, what you might want to do if you are grilling is putting the any drippings back onto the actual food before you serve it to try and retain as much of that nutrient content as possible. So a lot of people think that microwaving your food is bad because they think radiation, they think, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's actually the second best way to prepare food due to the short cooking time and exposure to heat. It actually preserves the nutrients. So only 20 to 30% of vitamin C was lost when cooking green vegetables, which is usually pretty good. There's only one other method that we're going to go through in a minute that actually is better than microwaving. So the way the microwave cooks the food is by channeling heat energy directly to the molecules inside the food, and therefore that heat energy heats up the molecules and cooks the food. However, there are a few issues like pizza. I don't know if you, I know whenever I put pizza in the microwave to heat it back up, it does have a chewiness, so sometimes the texture can be affected, even though the nutrient content might not be. So roasting and baking involves cooking through a dry heat. Vitamin and mineral losses tend to be minimal when it comes to roasting and baking, with the exception of B vitamins in meat that can decline with as much as 40%. So you can keep roasting your veggies, but you might not want to roast your meat because you are going to see a loss of B group vitamins like B12, for example. Sauteing and stir frying is a really healthy way to prepare food. It's where food's cooked in a saucepan over medium to high heat with a small amount of cooking oil or butter. So what it can actually do is because of the short cooking time, it prevents vitamin loss with the exception of vitamin C. And can also improve the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and some plant compounds, which is why cooking or sauteing or stir frying meats can actually be really beneficial. So frying is an unhealthier way to prepare food because it involves usually cooking food with a large amount of fat, usually oil, at a high temperature, and the food is often coated with batter or breadcrumbs, which is your refined carbohydrates, so that's not very healthy there. If you fry anything that has omega-3 in it, it actually degrades it by 70 to 85%. So tuna, for example, or salmon, you shouldn't be frying that because it actually makes a healthy food not so healthy. It does actually preserve vitamin C and B group vitamins and can actually increase starch in potatoes by turning that starch into resistant starch. But frying can produce aldehydes, which are directly linked to cancer. So frying is, I'd say the disadvantages do not outweigh the benefits. It might taste good, and it does, but there are definitely healthier, better ways to cook food out there. So steaming is another way, and it's actually the best way to preserve nutrients that are sensitive to either heat or water. So vitamin C is only ever reduced by about 9 to 15%, which is only second bested by microwaving. So if I don't know whether you've ever used a bamboo steamer before or these multi-story steamers or just steaming in a pot, because there's no contact with the cooking method, there's no leaching occurring. However, the downside to this is that the steamed vegetables may taste bland. So an easy way to remedy that is to actually season or maybe add some oil after you cook it to make it taste a bit nicer. So just a summary of all of the vitamins that we have and what they're sensitive to. So vitamin, I'm not going to go through these, you can have a look at it, but I really would like you to know this because you need to be able to prepare food that's going to get the most nutritional content out of the food preparation. Now there are a whole bunch of ways that you can actually reduce the loss of vitamins and minerals. I'm not going to go through them because I'm just literally going to read them out. So I'd like you to have a read of them, write them down. Some of them I already talked about. And that's it for how to retain nutrients and the best methods for cooking.